thank you to Andersen Windows and Buildertrend. Without what you guys are doing and the partnerships that we have formed, it'd be difficult to do what we're doing. So thanks.
And speaking of Andersen is introducing their new 100 series flush fin window this spring. This product allows for easy installation in stucco applications without the hassle of disturbing the stucco, saving time and money.
With Andersen, contractors in the Southwest now have replacement solutions for any project. Their FiberX material is the ultimate solution in Southwest climates, 2 times stronger than vinyl and with a finish 12 times thicker. FiberX withstands 150-degree temperatures. Even in dark colors, these windows won't fade, flake, blister, or peel. And now with the new flush fin product, upgrading old aluminum windows has never been easier.
Every new product introduced by Andersen is developed with the innovation, quality, and craftsmanship that has defined their brand for nearly 120 years. Learn more about the difference by visiting andersenwindows.com. That's ANDERSEN windows.com. This podcast is also brought to you by Buildertrend. Running a custom home building business can be chaotic, stressful, and demanding. You're not alone.
As a business owner, you manage multiple projects at a time, large budgets, a variety of subs, and needy clients. But it doesn't have to be complicated.
And if you're feeling overwhelmed in your business, construction management software like Buildertrend is exactly what you need.
Buildertrend helps you keep track of all your projects in one simple place. Once you're on board with the platform, you'll be able to streamline your processes, efficiently manage all aspects of your jobs, and improve communication with your subs and clients.
To learn more about how Buildertrend can help you work simpler, go to buildertrend.com/MC Homebuilders. Hey guys, so Modern Craftsman, we got Travis and Joe from Catalyst Built this week. Well, we'll get into it, but we had an episode recorded with Travis months ago that unfortunately we had audio issues. We lost it. It was a very sad story to call Travis and tell him that we had to redo that.
I think that we pretty much knew immediately that we lost it too.
And we tried for like 2 weeks to save it.
Yeah, but we didn't tell him right away because we were so mortified.
I think I might have told him in Switzerland when I saw him in person.
He's like, why didn't that podcast ever drop? Was it a dud?
Funny story. No, but so Travis and his partner Joe join us this week. Travis has been working on this really cool project specific to teaching the trades to young kids for a while now. We talked about it last episode, which you guys don't know about, but we talk about where he's at with that, the struggles he's faced, and of course we kind of chat through some of the logistics and hoping to get that to a place that is marketable. But I'd open it up. I'd love to open that conversation up to you guys after you give this a listen. Share on Instagram what your thoughts are in terms of who we're sharing or who we're educating. I think there's so much education out there for our peers, our people that are the same age as us, maybe down to say 18 years old. But what about the teenagers, the kids in elementary school? Should we be really educating at that level? And do you guys find that important?
Yeah, make sure you listen to this one till the end. Joe and Travis dig into their BS and Beer symposium that they're putting on 4 to 5 a year, all different parts of the country, where you can go for either a small fee or possibly even through a vendor be compensated.
Yeah, that's really cool.
To take some time off from work and head out there and further your education and training within the trades. But what's really impressive with that, they ended up putting $100 ticket fee on that to essentially prevent people from signing up for a free meal and then them having to get rid of it or donate a bunch of extra food that was going bad. So they put $100 price tag on that event or on those events for people to sign up so that they weren't bailing on it and wasting a bunch of food. And they take all of that money and they donate it to keep craft alive. And last year they just finalized their books. He had a big publisher clearinghouse check that was for over $42,000 that they raised to donate to keep craft alive. So props to them for that. Obviously very admirable. There's a ton of effort that goes into what they're doing, and essentially the same as us. They're not really monetizing that or doing it to pull a salary from it. They're doing it for service work for the industry. So a ton of respect for them for that. Make sure you listen up to the website and where you can find those events and patronize those events. Go check them out. I think that you will enjoy them.
And not to mention the breaking news he drops at the very end.
Oh, breaking news. MTV.
Dude, if you want me to take my shirt off, you just have to ask. Like, I'm an accommodating guy. I'm not one to make it difficult.
Why do we even have to ask? I just thought it was assumed.
Hey, Doug, since we're already recording, make sure you use that for the teaser clip.
Now we're ready.
Now we're ready. Travis, so let's just set the stage, because we had a fantastic conversation for 2 hours and X amount of minutes many months ago. And
It was a good one.
We did. And I'm not sure how soon after the podcast we realized we did not have your recording, but I think it was fairly soon after. And we probably delayed telling you because we were so bummed, and we were like, we got to figure out how to find it. But that conversation will be rehashed today.
Okay.
But in the form that we send out to our lovely guests, we always ask what they want to talk about. I'm gonna go cut right to the chase. You wrote that we can discuss the heartbreak of my kid's channel launch.
No, we can't leave with that. That's a nut punch, dude. That's brutal.
That's what you wrote.
Okay. All right. We'll start with the rough stuff.
So let's get the backstory. Give the backstory and then talk about the heartbreak.
We got to cue the music.
Without picking at anyone, though. I don't like to be negative on anyone, so that's tough.
That's okay.
Okay, so
you were not prepared.
Last time we talked, I was in Austin, Texas. I was in the Build Show studios with my son. We had just recorded, I don't know, like 7 or 8 different episodes to support what we had already recorded, because we were launching this. We're trying to launch a Build Show kind of for kids. And that's what I was down there doing. And that's what we had recorded that podcast from. That's why I was in the Build Show studios, because frankly, if you look at my follower numbers on Instagram and our massive social media empire that is Catalyst Built, Joe and I are running a massive organization here. It's a lot to keep track of, guys. Try to stay with me. We're not exactly, NS Builders, Tyler Grace, Awesome Framers. We're not pulling in those kind of numbers. So the only real reason that I think the only real reason it would make sense to bring someone like me onto the Build Show would be not for my giant following, but for the things that I wanted to do, what I haven't done yet. Right. So that was the idea is, hey, I went to Matt Reisinger and I said, look, you guys are doing a great thing. The Build Show stuff is amazing. I'm loving it. My son and I watch Build Show on Saturday mornings like little kids watch cartoons. Like, I'm sitting here with him on the couch watching Steve Basic go through details, and my son now wants to be an architect. And that's really special to me. I feel like you guys could do more. You could make this a big, bold, beautiful thing and have a kids channel. Yeah. And Matt goes, yeah, you should do that. I was like, no. I'm saying you should do that. You should have a kids channel. This is a great thing. And he goes, right, I know, you should do that. It's like, okay, well, I don't have a Build Show network, and I don't have camera people and audio experience, and that's not what I'm skilled at. Matt, you've already got this built. I'm saying you should take it and run with it. And he was like, no, you should come on and record episodes with your son and go from there. And so I started like putting together this curriculum, and like Joe and I taught in an elementary school here last year, taught a building science lesson for like 4 consecutive weeks, kind of introducing them to basic physics, and then all the way through a blower door test to their classroom on the last day, and gave them like a final and everything. It was really great. So I kind of had the curriculum started, and then my son and I started recording these episodes, and basically I'm a handful and I talk too much. We're already 5 minutes into this, and I haven't let anyone else speak. So you guys see how this goes. The editor's screwed, right? Like, the editor has no hope. He's got to cut from, an Encyclopedia Britannica volume, a paragraph. and that's what can be produced.
Mm.
So all this content that we shot, and I think it was like 22 episodes that we've shot so far. Sorry, Tyler. Oh, that's hard, man. That hurts.
No. I got a notification on my phone, on my watch.
Oh, okay. I thought you were signaling like we got to wrap this up, man. Like, this guy's
Imagine.
killing me already. Just forget it. Oh, anyway, we shot all this content, and it was an editing burden, and it hasn't gone anywhere. It's just either sitting in a hard drive somewhere or it doesn't exist anymore. But like, I was really excited about it. My son was like making plans for his income. Like, it was, I told him, I was like, I already have a job. I want to share this with you. Whatever money you make, put it into college, put it into, tools or travel or learn, but it's your money. I'll work for you for free because I just want to share this with you.
How old's your son?
He's 12 now. He was 11 when we started.
Did you have anyone directing you, or was this
No.
just like, all right, here, you can use the studio and just have at it?
Yeah, self-directed. Matthew Guthrie was the lead guy. Actually, it was Joey Puderbaugh. That's how far back we go with Build Show. Like, Joey Puderbaugh was still kind of the lead, or at least my liaison there, that was kind of directing things and introduced me to the process from them. And I don't want to nitpick Build Show at all. I think what they're doing is great, and their setup is helping so many people. Like, well, I assume like you guys, I mean, like Joe and I, we still watch the content, and that's how I'm trying to get better and learn every day. So I don't want this to sound at all like I'm picking at Build Show. I am not. I can't do what they do. They're better at it. You guys are, media, motif media, all that. You guys have a skill set that I don't really possess on that level. So I'm not picking at anyone for not doing something the way it should have been, because I don't know how it should have been.
Right.
But I know that starting to shoot that content way back when, and then not being able to do anything with it yet, just was kind of heartbreaking. Like, my son still asks me about it every few months. Like, they told us, I think it's been like 4 months ago, they're like, hey, don't shoot any more content. We don't know what's happening with that. And so the way that this stuff works, I imagine, is the same for you guys. When you shoot something, when it becomes something, you get paid, but you're kind of shooting on spec. So, like, I don't know, I bought my son a baseball bat and the new glove. It was like, no, man, it's going to go somewhere. This is going to be great. But we're not there yet. So that content, I think Matt has a new editor, Matthew Guthrie, the guy who replaced Joey at Build. He has a new editor on it, and they're working through it. So hopefully it still comes together. Yeah. But I feel like I missed this window of time between the end of the curriculum that I designed and now my son being, gosh, at least 6 months older, and it seems like more.
Yeah. He's into girls now.
He totally is. There's a girl that lives like one block up, and he's like, yeah, Dad, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm like, what? You don't go for a walk? Like, he's got a 5K.
His ship has sailed. He's like, go hang out with Matt Reisinger and Austin and my dad, or go mess around with girls. He's taking girls.
Yeah. So I guess I'm just worried that time is lost, because the way that I designed the curriculum was like to take the kids from dirt all the way through a finished house. Yeah. And the house that we were working on is a fine home building house. So it was very easy to get that footage on Saturdays with him. And that house is going to go to the homeowner in a week, 2 weeks. And that I can't get back in there to finish out that content. So
I want to ask you some questions regarding this. And if you feel uncomfortable answering them, feel free to not answer them. Who was funding all of this from the get-go? Were you?
Yeah. So that I should totally clarify. Matt paid for the videography. So like Build Show is paid for all the video. Sure. I haven't done any of that. I mean, I formed an LLC and like opened some accounts and did some stuff for my son, but no, I got my investment in a whiteboard, and that's about it. So my investment's super low. He's taking a bath on it if he doesn't do anything with it. Build Show Productions is not Matt Reisinger. Right. They're two things. But yeah, they paid for the videography. So I'm not out of pocket. I'm not complaining about that. I want the time with my son. I want that project to be completed. It's like anything we build, guys. If you don't get to see the project through, it's tough.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah.
No, and the reason I asked that is more so from not from your perspective, but from the other hand there, where if you're paying to produce a bunch of content, I would feel as though you would want somebody who knows what that end product is supposed to look like directing that process, because you don't make content in that manner. You don't know how that's supposed to look, how to distill that down to what's necessary, what's not necessary. And I think that to avoid a massive editing project, that it would have behooved someone to really, I guess, refine that product and process prior to just being like, hey, come in and shoot 22 episodes worth of stuff. Like, that's a lot.
To be fair to them, I think they probably expected me to be able to do more self-editing. Like, at the time that I was doing this, I had already written a couple articles. Like, editing is something that I'm supposed to be somewhat familiar with, right? But I'm not brief and concise, and I aspire to be. It's my greatest failing. I have a hard time being brief.
And so
it's too much.
I did not realize that that's where that was going to go, just for the record. But I don't want to I don't want to actually focus too much on why it's not working. What I will say, in knowing you, Travis and Joe, but like you're specifically saying you're not concise, and you should be. My opinion is you're being too hard on yourself there, where it's like I've always enjoyed our conversations because you are like you explain in a way that it makes it easy to understand. So the fact that it's a difficult thing to edit, I mean, whatever, and everyone can take that for the value in which it is. But my purpose of bringing this up is because on our first conversation that unfortunately did not get released as an episode, that was my biggest interest from our conversation, is like, man, like, you're really, I left there. Tyler and I have talked about it. I can't tell you how many times my wife and I talk about, how do we create this content for kids? It's like, I got plenty of kids. I need to just create content with them. Like, how do I get them to like communicate what they're doing, like what they see it as, right? Where it would be interesting. And obviously your son's 11 now, 12, or was 11 now 12. That's a great age, because I think one of the things that you said that really was interesting last time was that, and you just alluded to the fact that you walked them through kind of like the basic physics and all the way to a blower door test, where, there's guys that are 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old in this industry that don't know what a blower door test is. And, and you had said that when you get them at that younger age, they're more curious. So it's going to be easier for them to learn, where it's like you use the example of the WRB and talking about why it's needed, and you explained it. It's like, well, it keeps the weather out, and you want to keep the inside air inside, and they were like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Where it's like you try to explain that to a guy in his 50s that's been building with Tyvek his whole life and not taping anything. It's like, no, homes need to breathe. It's like, it's just an interesting, and what came out of that conversation was my realization is that everything that we're dumping into this industry from an education perspective is, just, I'm using age brackets, but basically, 25 years old down to like 18. And no one's really focusing on under 18 or even under 10 years old. Yeah. And we use the reference Blippi. I remember we talked about Blippi quite a bit. And, and listen, my kids are young, so there's plenty of Blippi coming on TV. And, I'm more curious about like the economics of his business. So I'm reading articles about him, like why he started this channel on YouTube, how he's worth $36 million now because of he grabbed a kid with a camera and just shot like random stuff of him playing with toys but what he does is, I'm watching it, and I remember the episode, he had a lawnmower, and he literally walked through the steps it took to change the oil in the lawnmower. And he's explaining this to a 4-year-old. Right. And my son's watching it, and it's like he understands.
Yeah,
he's like,
they're way smarter than we give them credit.
Yeah, he's like, oh yeah, I get it. Like, you got to change the oil. It's like, you got to do the oil filter for, and I'm watching them. I'm watching Blippi explain this to 4-year-olds, and I'm like, this is really important, especially for our industry, where it's like you introduce this at a young enough age. Like, boys, in general, I'm not classifying boys versus girls, but boys in general have this infatuation for trucks, and like my son. But that doesn't mean he's going to be a truck driver or drive a dump truck or run an excavator. But it's a toy at that age. But what if you continue that like the opportunity for him to be educated on that, where it's like when he's 10 years old, it's like, here, like, are you still interested in it? 15 years old, it's like, would you want to learn how to operate one of these? Would you want to understand the career that you could have, running one of these? And I feel like
all those creative options open for them. Like you nurture whatever your child is interested in, right? Like,
right.
That's how.
And I think that, and I don't think I think as a society, we don't do that, is that we introduce all of these things at a young age because it's something that you can funnel through the TV, like trucks, like construction. But then there's an age where you start, guiding them in a direction that you want them to be in. Like I watched it with kids I grew up with, where it's like, no, you're gonna be a baseball player, and kids I grew up with resented their parents because all their parents cared about was pushing them to be the best baseball player.
Yeah.
And, and it's like, well, that was that's what you wanted. What if he wanted to do something else?
Yeah. You're cutting me to the core because my son wants to be a baseball player. Like, oh, am I encouraging him too much? You're burning me down, Nick.
Travis, what if nothing comes of this? Then what? Are you done with it? Are you going to take another path?
Well, I want to give Matt credit here because Matt Reisinger is about as stand-up guy as there is. And when I called him, and it's been a couple months ago, I was like, man, I'm really worried about this. I'm excited to be on the channel. It's a blessing to have that opportunity to share and teach and do the other things that we get to do. But I want to do this other thing. Like, that's what you brought me in for. Let me do my job. And he was like, hey, we're going to get it out. Don't worry about it. And I said, well, how about this? If it doesn't work out and you guys don't want the footage, will you sell it to me? And he goes, you shot the footage, Travis. It's your footage. It's yours. Mm-hmm. So to Matt's credit, I don't think any money would change hands. I think it would just be a deal where I need to get it and do something with it and find a way to learn editing in my free time, which doesn't exist, or I'm sure there's ways to solve it. It won't go away, but I just worry that the immediacy of things is so important in our current culture. Like Joe and I talk about this all the time. We shot all this footage in Switzerland that a lot of it didn't go anywhere. And we did the same when we went to Huber, and we've done all this other stuff. It's like, yeah, that's still good content. Like, nothing's changed so dramatically that doesn't make sense to show it now. It's still great content if it's edited right, but it just feels stale. It's old. Yeah. You didn't shoot it yesterday. It's not what's going on it's not Insta. Like, you can't put non-Insta in the Instagram, right?
I mean, Trev, like that thought crossed my mind when I'm watching Dave Cooper upload his videos on the bus. Right. And I'm like, Doug, like, when are we going to get this stuff out? And he's like, oh, a couple weeks.
Too late.
I'm like, yeah. And it's like, and listen, the content did great. And it's like, the reality is it's evergreen in that sense. Sure. But it does become this, I think that's the position you're in right now, where it's like you've shot 22 episodes and you feel as though, like, well, if I don't do anything with it, it's old news. Like, what if they come out with a product that, actually is better than everything else that we just showed? It's like, well, the reality is, even if you released, say you release 18 episodes and you never finish the house and they don't ever see the house complete. It's like, but you got them 80% of the way there.
Yeah, I still introduced that content to kids.
And it's like, hey, sorry, like, do a video. It's like, hey, sorry, we didn't get to finish the house. Let's do it again.
I mean, I think that this does present you with a unique opportunity for a lot of lessons with your son as well. I don't think that there's a lot of 11, 12-year-olds who are going to have firsthand experience of going through this entire process and, for lack of a better term, it not working out or potentially failing. And then what do you do at that point? Which I think is a really huge opportunity to be able to either right that ship or say, hey, let's gauge how much time we spent on this and how much more time we'd have to invest. Is our time better spent elsewhere? It is a shame, but it does present you with an opportunity for an 11-year-old who has a lot of stake in something to realize that, like, this is life. This is I know my 9-year-old, 10-year-old does not understand those lessons, like, because we make everything happen for her and everything is within our control. So although that is a shame, I don't think that that's a lesson to be lost here.
That's fair. Yeah, I think there's definitely the end of this story is not written yet. Like we'll get there. I hope. It's just it was a little bit heart-wrenching to have those conversations over the last few months about like, oh, what about do we need to go shoot something? Like, where are we at on the schedule?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we're not shooting.
Well, especially with a child involved, where it's like you made the reference earlier about like when we don't see a project complete. We have our project that we've been filming, and the project's on pause. And, we're like, when we don't know when we're going to pick it back up. The client just decided to pause the project, and that kills.
Yeah.
And for so many reasons, right? Like the morale of the project, the cash flow of the project, the vendor partnerships that were part of that project. It's like I'm not just stopping the project and moving on to something else. I'm stopping the project and letting down 20 plus people. None of them are under the age of 30, but still, like it's still heart-wrenching to have that conversation.
Yes.
Joe, what's your role in this and thinking about like filming with the Fine Home Building and thinking about, introducing this to the younger generation? What are your thoughts?
Well, trying to think, how far back do you want me to go? Well, like to Travis's credit, when he was, we did the things at the local school, and to kind of reiterate on a point, their minds are like sponges. We went there 1 week and we taught them about the 4 control layers. We come back the next week and that's our opening question. Who can remember the 4 control layers? And I wouldn't say half the room, but close to it. These are what 3rd grade kids are telling us the 4 control layers. I have a 20-year-old who works for us who can't tell us the 4 control layers, and we remind him about it every couple months.
He gets it right most of the time.
Yes, not in the right order, but he can usually name them. And so when Travis started talking to me about this, the Build Show Basics was the name of his show. And, we're discussing it, and he's telling me his plans, and he's like, well, I'll go to this job site on Saturday, and he's coordinating with the videographer and obviously with Gray, his son. And I watched him over the course of months put in a lot of effort into this. And so, I wasn't part of that portion. It was just, I would talk to him about it more like we discuss all our business. Usually a quick conversation over lunch. And then the transition from that to like, wait, maybe Catalyst should put up its own content when, Travis obviously, but then, we're filming our jobs, and the transition to that and then adding that in what we're doing on top of the Fine Home Building is more like you were saying, Tyler. We have a director, we have notes, we have, they put a lot of time into editing. We've done some work with Rockwool where, it kind of blew Travis and I's mind. They showed up with a whole crew. And we shot, I think we ended with 3 hours of content. We probably shot 50 hours of content. And so it's different. One thing that we've kind of adapted ourselves to with the Build Show stuff is like it's self-editing. We try to keep it a 5-minute video. We try to do it in one take because there's not heavy editing. So it's really on us just to produce really good content the first time. And so you have to be adaptable because Fine Home Building we'll get a note 2 weeks later and they say, hey, we're sending out the videographer. We need you to say this line like this with this product or this detail you're doing on the house. Make sure you're wearing the same clothes you were wearing the day you did the original video. And so it's just, it's a lot to keep track of mentally. In hindsight, we should have brought a video camera to the school when we were doing those half-hour classes. And it's always been something we've, even before the Build Show Basics, we were going up to see Matt Bloomquist and his program up in Illinois. We have a group in Kansas City that we regularly have those kids out to our job sites. And so it's just something near and dear to us.
I wonder if Matt Reisinger stole our audio and sabotaged us for the podcast.
Yeah, maybe he had like another recording in the studio and was like, "There's no way that's getting
As you
out."
guys are talking, I'm thinking about this. He's got somebody coming in on the back end. Maybe he's threatening Doug.
Now, Matt's a great guy.
Not at all.
We're
man.
gonna get in trouble for you saying that.
It's all right.
Dude, you guys
wouldn't-
know Matt. He's
it
a
wouldn't be
stand-up
the
guy.
first
It's
time.
totally not that. We're just, yeah. I would say the difference that Joe pointed out is so broad. I would like to get you guys to sort of go through that from your perspective, because, you know, having done some work with Build Show, a little bit of work with Fine Home Building, and some like with, as Joe said, Rockwell and some of these other product sponsors, it is a very different experience every time. And I know you guys just had a big time at Andersen, and I haven't seen the content from it yet, but I heard the podcast. I'm curious, what's been your experience going from this manufacturer to this group to this, and then obviously Nick with your own, you're kind of controlling that side now more than ever. And really that was just kind of launching. Motif was just launching when we were in Switzerland, right?
Yeah, that was the first year one.
Okay.
I mean, Nick probably has more experience and could speak to this better, but I prefer to have a loose script and then go off the cuff rather than be fed lines. I find it really difficult to be fed lines. I think it puts you on the spot. It's very disingenuous. And I just don't think it makes for the best content. I know that, and this isn't a knock at Fine Home Building. That's just how they work. They set up a contract with a vendor who wants very specific deliverables, and then they direct that and produce that content to ensure that they nail those deliverables rather than having to send somebody out again. So when we have an opportunity to create content based on our parameters, or with Doug, or like you said, the Andersen, for me, it winds up being very natural. And this is not blowing smoke up either of our asses or out of our asses, but Nick and I we have an ability to be told something or educated on something, process that, and then regurgitate that pretty directly and pretty efficiently, that we can, even in Andersen, everything essentially was one take. We took the factory tour the day before. A lot of the information stuck. Any questions that we had, we sorted out right before, and then we're able to deliver the content pretty seamlessly. And I don't think that a lot of trade guys work that way. And I think a lot of trade guys, and this is through my experience with MT Copeland, they're good at what they do on the tools, but then when it comes to either speaking while doing that or articulating what's going through their head, they fumble. And I think that that's where the editing comes in. So it is a different experience with everyone. I know that I prefer to have a more loose directive and just fly off the cuff, rather than be fed lines and have it more scripted.
Same.
But everyone is different there. And I think it comes down, a lot of times it comes down to money, or if you're contracted to produce content through somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things we're talking about here. Because creating content, there's different outcomes, or we're talking about different outcomes, right? Like creating content for someone, whether it's a brand or Fine Home Building or a vendor. It's creating content for education. It's creating content for social exposure and business building. Like they're all different. But to keep on track with what you're talking about from an education standpoint and talking about like the basics, to me, everything that we've kind of considered when it came to the basics of, sharing what we're doing or creating content around those basics. And from what I've seen, it doesn't need to be overly engineered, we'll call it. Meaning like however long, if say you walked the job site when you were, mass excavated with your son, you probably walked around the job site for what, an hour?
Yeah. I mean, it was I bet we were there for an hour and a half. Like the way that I structured everything, it was like, hey, I'm going to explain this to you, and we're not going to shoot anything. I just want you to get familiar. Then when we shoot, it'll be you explaining back to me, and then for
having a conversation about it.
Yes, exactly. Because then he can explain it to his friends. Because if we do it in my words, it's too long. Everybody gets bored, and his age group isn't going to listen to me.
So in my opinion, again, we're talking about, like, I haven't seen it, but in my opinion, the content should just be that. It shouldn't be edited to. It should just be the conversation as him regurgitating. And I say that not as a knock against who's editing it. I'm saying that as, in support of what you guys have done. And Joe, like, whether it's your own channel, whether that's for someone else, whether it's this brand new thing, the point is that content is valuable, and 1,000 12-year-olds are going to watch that and be like, oh, this kid's going to teach me about mass excavation. And, and he might get 75% of it right, and you're going to correct the other 25%, and that's cool. And that's it.
Yeah.
Do you think, Travis, that the initial experience with the Build Show Basics was a learning experience for you to be able to refine and distill that process moving forward to understand what you have to do? And that's the way that you would prefer to work moving forward?
I don't know.
Do you prefer, like, so? And for the listeners who aren't familiar with this process, you're saying that Rockwell filmed a completely different way and the process was completely different than when you work with a company like Fine Home Building. And I think a lot of times the difference there, and again, this is for the listeners, so correct me if I'm wrong, but my experience with Fine Home Building is vendor goes to Fine Home Building and says, hey, we have a need for this type of content. Here are the deliverables. Here's the script. We need you to find the talent for that video. Then they go to you or to me, and now Fine Home Building is responsible for managing us and producing content for somebody else. So there's a middleman there where you have somebody like Rockwell or Andersen came directly to us, and there was no middleman that was trying to do their job to fulfill the needs of the vendor. So it was far less scripted. They came to us to do what we do. And that's the difference in my experience with the different types of vendors and the different type of content.
I would agree that essentially the Rockwell thing that we did, we had, I think it was a 7 or 8 person film crew. I mean, there was a sound person with a sound editor. There was a still photographer. There were 3 video cameras. There was a director. There was someone in the booth, like just tracking everything all at once. It was incredibly professionally shot. I assume the way they shoot like commercials and movies and stuff, like it was a big deal. And we were kind of blown away by it. But then, to like what we've done on the Fine Home Building house, that project, that's been much more, not scripted really at all. There was maybe 1 or 2 items where, and frankly, Rockwell's wasn't scripted. It was always us. Isn't that right, Joe?
Yeah, I would say there was really where I was reading something like verbatim twice. And then the rest of the time, rest of the time it's like review the notes and just kind of talk about the product. Because everyone wants it to be natural.
Yep.
And so if you're giving a sales pitch, it really, it translates as unnatural.
But to your first point, Tyler, yes, it's been the toughest learning experience for me, frankly, because like I'm excited about my career in building, and I'm passionate about building science, and I'm really passionate about trying to teach the way people have taught me and share what I know. And so that part is really easy, and I'm excited about it. I have all this enthusiasm for it. But the first few shoot sessions with my son went really, really well and were easy. And then we got into the more complex things where it's like, well, where's the stopping point? Where do I break this up? And that's where I learned I'm terrible. Like I was really bad at being succinct. And I could see the frustration with my son where he would, we'd be 45 minutes into trying to shoot a 5-minute video. And you know how it is, like I'm sure there's some tired trope in actual commercials and film industry where it's like you don't work with kids and you don't work with animals because it's just impossible to get it right in a quick enough time before they lose interest and then the fire's gone. Like that little spark in their eye goes quick, man. You got to nail it pretty quick. And I'm not that way. Like I want to get it exactly right. And if it takes all day to get it exactly right, that's how long it takes. That's the way our houses come out. Like, hey, it wasn't the fastest, but damn it, there's nothing that you're going to fix here because it's done and it's done right.
And I know we're not. It's funny. I didn't think we like go down the whole like this is how we should do it and this is the structure. But I look at that as the opportunity there is if you truly want to get that thorough with something, and you don't have the attention from a kid to go through step by step on how to install 6-piece crown molding, right? Then focus on the one cut, and it's a 10-minute conversation on how to cut crown molding and why you cut it upside down and why you cut it with a power saw and then a coping saw. It's like totally. And it's bite size and what happens there is now it's digestible, right? Like they're learning one little tiny thing. But I don't think you're screwing up. I think what you're doing is you're outlining the entire curriculum and you're trying to get it in one shot. And maybe you film 90 minutes with your kid, realizing that you only get 8 minutes out of it. And you clip that up into, 4 8-minute clips. And everything else is just, it would be great, but it's level 2, right? Like you're talking level 1 right now, save that for level 2.
Yeah, there's an art to that brevity as well. I find it very difficult even writing blog posts from like, this is going to be a simple blog post. And then I get going and there's a million things that come into my head at once. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to add this and I'm going to add, and all of a sudden I'm like 3 pages into this, an hour and a half later. I'm like, this was supposed to be very quick, where it is hard to do that. It's funny we're having this conversation too, because I was laying in bed with my youngest last night and we watched a show on sea turtles, and it was a 7-minute show on sea turtles, and there were 2 types of sea turtles, and they gave a basic overview on them, and then they just did a quick piece on each of these type where you like met an actual sea turtle of these types, and they didn't try to show you too much. They gave you this overview, then they told you about an issue that each of these sea turtles were having. And the takeaway is like, okay, I understand there's 2 different types. You don't know everything about them, but then you saw each of them in their own environment. I think that's what Nick's saying as well, where if you have 7 minutes to pitch something to kids, like we can't know everything about them. It's more so like, here's what this is. Here's what this is. Now let's dig on a specific on each of them that may be completely fucking irrelevant in like the grand scheme of things, but it's just like you're picking something that you can dig into on a high enough level that's not going to like lose the attention. Because I don't have a great attention span, but I know my kids, it's as soon as something shiny goes by, it's like, all right, see ya. That's it. And
that's the booby trap here, because this is, in my opinion, this is such a big responsibility. Like, let's say that a father and son sit down to watch one build show video to try it one time. And they're like, oh, there's this build show network. I saw a thing on Instagram and let's check it out. If that one's not a banger, if that one isn't the concise, this is exciting, the kid is in, they don't watch a second one. And if we're looking at an opportunity to seize the moment to get kids excited about building and we stub our toe, then we're doing a disservice. Like, it's the opposite of the goal. We're trying to bring him in and get him excited. If I'm the front man for that, we're in big trouble, guys.
I disagree with that. No, Travis, I disagree with that, because like you could screw up the first one and then, John over here never watches it. And then Carl watches episode 3 that is a banger. And then goes, hey, have you seen, this show? Oh, I saw the first episode. It sucked. I know, but episode 3 is awesome. Oh, let me give it another shot.
I hope you're right.
But that's the reality of it. And it's not like, I don't think that's an opinion. I think that's a true case where it's like, everyone has a bad experience doing something. But if your best friend comes in and you go to a restaurant, you have a terrible experience. right? I'm never going back there. It sucked. And then your best friend, and then Joe goes, and Joe calls you and like, Travis, that restaurant, the food was so good. You're probably going to give it another shot. You're like, well, how did I have that bad of an experience? And I think that, you know, this is where it's like you're going to spend too much time thinking about getting the first one right, where the reality is and something you said in your forum is like talking about like influencer marketing and things like that. But the reality of all of this is you just have to do it, and then you adapt over time.
But that's the tough part, is that he recorded all of this content.
No, I know.
And like didn't have an opportunity to digest it and be like, I need to change this, I need to change that.
Matt's gonna call us and be like, guys, I'm working on it.
Yeah. What do you say from this are like the biggest takeaways as far as lessons that you learned?
Well, just from like the progression of shooting through the stuff with my son, I learned very quickly that I needed to be organized at his scale, not at my scale. Like for me, organized is like a 6-page punch list, a Gantt chart, and 3 pages of schedule documents. But organized at his level is, I need a whiteboard on site that has the next 5 things we're going to talk about in as short a sentence as I can make it with no extra words.
Yeah.
Like no descriptive. Don't make sure you put in the keywords so that he says vapor. Don't even mention vapor. Just leave it out. We're talking about the wall, and we're going to talk about this layer. And it was just about the distillation, like boiling it down to getting to what was really the core, which was so helpful for me. And hopefully, like I guess that would be the most important thing that I got out of it, was I have to very rapidly adapt to what the viewer is going to take away, because I didn't shoot it for guys like you that already know all this stuff. Like we can discuss this stuff over a beer, and yeah, there's going to be something that Nick understands better than I do. And, you know, Tyler's going to understand that everybody has their higher level thing that their process dialed in on. But this is about trying to appeal to a very specific audience that isn't me. Like I know what I'm interested in. It's easy for me to make content for me. Like it's just totally different to think about what would be enough of an interesting detail, simplified enough to invite people in who aren't necessarily planning to be the next chemical engineer at Huber.
It's interesting listening to you speak about this. I'm thinking how similar this is to marketing your business, where I want to tell a customer every single thing that we do, but it's like, why? You're going to lose them. And like, what is the distillation of my product and my process that's going to stick out to a customer who has no idea what I'm talking about? And it's not that much different than trying to speak to these kids.
Yeah, you're right. And Joe and I don't spend enough time talking about like how we want to grow our business. We focus so much on delivering that product to our client that we're not usually focused on our business. We're focused on our product. And I think that's a really point you make, Tyler.
It's tough.
That's how we should be thinking of it.
So I feel like we've had you on more than once before. Have we? Or no? Just the one time?
Joe and I were on once, then we recorded the one in Austin we didn't get. So I think this is just the second real recording.
So for everyone who hasn't listened to the first one or doesn't recall, which I would assume is a lot of people because I don't even recall, I apologize. You guys are partners in a business. You're located in Kansas, correct? Just a little background on what you guys do and how each of you individually were involved with the trades and how you got into the trades, just so everyone has an idea of your business and a little bit of your background.
All right. Joe Cook, co-owner of Catalyst Construction. We've been in business since 2008. We started it basically in the recession, the housing market, because Travis and I were both project managers for a production builder. We had a third partner and who's an engineer, and because of his license as an engineer, he just went and filled out a form and got his general contractor's license. And we did that for probably 2 years. And I think he was ready to go back to engineering and have more of a stable job. At that point, I went ahead and got the general contractor's license. Travis got his, I'm actually going to tell Travis the story. I got the general contractor's license. And then a couple years later, maybe like a year and a half, I went ahead and got the master plumber's license. And that was, a lot of that was just out of sheer frustration. At that point in time, we were heavy in the remodels, and we'd bring in trades, and they would want us to do 90% of their prep work before they went in and actually, like in this example, ran the pipe. And I'm sitting there looking at it. It's like, well, I already sistered up all the joists. I already demoed this wall. Like, I can put in plumbing and make sure it has proper fall and, run the supply. So it was just a decision of that ease of permit. Most of the time we would have to go ahead and buy the city license for the plumber we hired or various other trades because they weren't up to date. Kansas City, on the Kansas side, we have one big county, but it's 25 different cities within the county. And
I remember this now. This now. It's all coming back to me.
It was really a matter of convenience. And then it really became advantageous once we brought on employees because we trained them up and then we could do these smaller projects completely in-house.
So what is your background prior to Catalyst? I think I had read that you were in some sort of finishing.
Yeah, I worked for a remodeler. I basically was going to community college and started painting in the summer. And that's how I got my feet wet in the trades. And then, fast forward, I worked for a remodeling company. I would only paint when there was paint work. The rest of the time I'd put on a tool belt and just do whatever task needed to be done. And then that transitioned into working for a builder. Started out as an assistant superintendent and then worked my way up to project manager.
So a quick pause. You started painting in college as like a college job. What the exposure to the paint industry at that point, what did you experience that opened your eyes that you were intrigued enough to explore remodeling or even just entertain painting more? Because I think of a college job now and even painting, and I don't see many people thinking of that as a career choice or to dive deeper into the trades as much as just like, hey, I'm getting some beer money.
So there was definitely some of that.
But understood.
I think after a while, I noticed that I was like, wow, you can really take something that doesn't look very good and just some decent wood filler, caulking, prep, and then a good paint job can get you halfway there to like a really nice project.
Yeah.
And including like putting in new appliances or changing out like light fixtures, just painting the walls, trim, cabinets. And it kind of opened my eyes that like, oh, this is kind of viable. And I worked for a painter who he ended up retiring like my third year and said, hey, Joe, if you want to buy all my equipment, I'll sell it to you for a song. And so I kind of got nudged in the right direction, I guess you'd say. And I ran that company. I had a painting company for, I don't know, maybe 5 years. I don't think for me, that's not sustainable. It's just it's a harder market to compete in. And so, just kind of transitioned. I actually was painting for this remodeler almost exclusively, and then they offered me a job. So it's a real process.
What was the least sustainable thing about it? Just the cutthroat, price-driven aspect of the industry?
Yeah, because basically we build houses. I used to paint the same way. Like, I'd go to a house, one of these newer built homes that it's 4 years old, already needs a paint job. And I'm walking around with the client and I'm like, well, they didn't do X, Y, and Z. And so I'd even have conversations about, it's fine if you get other prices, just make sure we're giving the same service.
Yeah.
And you just lose more than you get because ultimately the dollar talks. And a lot of homeowners at the time, this is early 2000s, I think people stayed in their houses 5 to 7 years more then than they do now. It's still, I mean, price is always a conversation, but I felt like in that industry, it was more of an emphasis than it is in building.
I mean, you're a walking example of why that's such a difficult business to be in, because they're like, well, we could just get college kids to paint this and it's the same thing.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And not understanding what they're actually getting.
Yeah. And I mean, like, it's the hardest thing with painting. It's just they sell rollers and paintbrushes at Home Depot. I could do it for that.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's not the same thing.
I used to not I would not do exteriors in the middle of the summer in Kansas City because it's 90, 100 degrees and you're really above that threshold for where paint performs well. And people would look at me like I was crazy. I would stack my schedule in the spring and the fall, try to do interiors in the middle of the summer and in the winter. And I was, kind of on an island with that mindset.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I would say of many of the trades that one is a difficult, and I have a lot of respect for painters who are looking to do nice paint jobs, because it does seem that it's the type of thing where it's just like, oh, it's a change of color. That's
Yep.
it. You don't, there's nothing else to it. Travis, how about you? You were working for a remodeler for your first job in the trades?
Yeah, it's true. I got my start building sets in high school for the theater department. So I'm
Nice.
way back to like first hands on the tools. Like you guys remember the Makita stick batteries? Are you old enough to remember
Yes.
those? Yeah.
Yeah, they had like the little saw and
Yeah.
the
Tiny
yeah,
blade.
The
like
giant
tiny
pistol grip drill.
Yes.
yeah.
Totally.
Fun fact, I
Before-
put a Phillips tip bit through my father's thumb while we were building some shelves. So
Put him in his place, did you?
Oh yeah. Well, I think I was gonna say he put me in my place, but no, he just got mad at me and yelled. But
Yeah, I almost took off my dad's finger with a pruning lopper. Pull the rope. Like he was showing me how it worked, and like handed me the pole and was like, "See, then you put the limb here." And anyway, we can all kill our fathers with the tools that he's provided, right? So yeah, I started on the tools in high school, and then after high school, I was waiting tables and messing around, being a college age kid, but not going to college classes, and then took a job as a photographer, which is what I thought I was going to do. But I was a film guy, so my timing was kind of crummy. I worked as a documentation photographer in the heavy construction industry, doing like aerials and architectural stuff and like pipeline documentation. It's basically cheap insurance for a contractor who's going to put a pipeline down a street to have a picture of every driveway, so that when the guy comes out and says, "You owe me for a new driveway," he goes, "Here's the picture of all the cracks. I don't owe you anything," and keeps walking. So I did stuff like that for a few years, and then got into remodeling on a really small crew. It was me and one other guy, Bill Faltermeyer, who knew how to do everything. And I still give him so much credit for just like exposing me to every bit of every trade. Like we hung wallpaper, we built cabinets, we, be building a deck on Friday and installing windows on a Monday, and then painting a house and swapping out an HVAC unit. Like it was everything all the time. It was really bizarre variety. And so that made me very comfortable, probably a little too comfortable, like thinking I was better at stuff than I was, because I had this tiny experience doing all these things, but I had done all those things. So I felt very at ease to just try whatever.
You didn't find that to be overwhelming at all for you?
Bill was so like chill
Mhm.
that nothing ever seemed like a big deal. And so I think that gave me that like false confidence early on, and be like, it's no big deal. I mean, Bill doesn't think it's a big deal. We'll just do
Enough
it.
to be dangerous.
Totally was dangerous. Yeah, I got in over my head a couple of times on projects. I was like, oh, this is the first time I've tried to build a whole kitchen full of cabinets and not an island.
Yeah.
This is a much bigger job. Like Joe would probably tell the story even better than I would, but I had never done fine finishing. And we were working as project managers, and I was like, oh, I'm going to have the cabinet company that we use on these houses do my kitchen at home, because I had bought a house. Super excited. And they provided cabinets, but had to be field finished. And I knew Joe was gangster with the finishing gun. So I was like, hey man, if I can hook you up with these appliances that I've got left over on this project and maybe this other stuff and, buy the product. Would you spray my cabinets? He's like, yeah, no problem, for sure. It's like, awesome. So we set up all my cabinet doors and everything. And I was like, all right, so I want this antique glazing and I want this, and I want this. And he's like, well, I'm not staining and glazing all that stuff. It's going to work. You're going to have to sand it. You're going to have to do all this. I was like, hold on. I thought you said you were going to do all this. He's like, I'll shoot him, but I'm not doing all that. That's a great, you have any idea what you're asking?
Yeah.
And of course I didn't. I had no idea, because what I had done was I stained something and painted brushed polyurethane on it. That was my cabinet finishing experience with the remodeler. And so it was the first time that I really understood, oh, that's what I'm asking. This is an amazing amount of work. So it was definitely a weird way to come into the trades, where you're armed to feel comfortable doing everything, but not really the level of mastery that obviously I've worked to attain since. And I'm still not a master of much of anything. I'm pretty confident in my electrical abilities. I like to think I can trim with most of them, but I'm not fast at anything because everything was variety all the time. I never learned speed on anything. So it's embarrassing how slow some of the things that I'm like, oh, I'm really good at this. Well, it looks good, but that was a day. That's 2 hours of work. I thought this was how fast we were supposed to do this.
I often wonder if the smaller remodeling company, something more akin to what I'm doing, is a better opportunity for people to get their feet wet, where they get to experience so many different trades, or if that's just so overwhelming because you're jumping from one thing to another. You don't have a full understanding of what you're doing, and it's so difficult to retain everything, and you don't become efficient unless you're doing it over and over for years and years and years. So it's you bring somebody on board, you work with them for 5 years, and then they're finally not costing you money anymore, and then you either fall apart, you can't stand the way they breathe working next to you anymore, or they go start their own thing. And it's maybe just specialize and you could teach somebody 1 or 2 trades. I don't know what the answer is.
Well, we talked about this with Nick a little bit in Switzerland, because we were deciding to grow our team a little bit. And we were saying, hey, what's your process like, Nick? When you bring on new crew, and we're looking at maybe bringing on this guy, and we want to keep him in remodeling for 2 years. He doesn't touch a new home project management schedule. He doesn't have access to scheduling trades for 2 years. He's just going to do renovation work with us, because in my view, that's, I think, what made me good at project management was I knew how to solve all the problems, and I could see all the problems coming a mile away. So I kind of had the best of both worlds. I know if they miss this, it's going to be that on the back end, and I don't want that outcome. So I'm catching them on the front. That's what good project management is. But the renovation side of that allows you to be armed with, no, when they BS me and say, well, no, this is how we do it, you can go, no, I've done that. This is how we're going to do it. And you need to do it this way. And it needs to be done by tomorrow, or this all falls apart. And so that's why in my opinion, that's why that process has been implemented on our end for our new guys that we want to bring into project management for new home and custom. They've got to be able to learn all the problem solving stuff that you learn in renovation, all the surprises and problems that you have to on the fly resolve. I think that's a great foundation, or at least I feel like it served me well.
I don't disagree with that at all. You have experience in all of that. You're peeling back. You're starting with an abnormal set of conditions, and then to try and make it work right with existing constraints. A lot of times remodels are some of the most difficult projects. And I think that if you can handle that and you can get to the finish line well with that it would give you a jump start on the new builds. Is you guys are trying to figure out systems like this for your business. And I know early on you said in the conversation, you said that you guys are so involved on the day-to-day activities that you're focused so much on the product that you have a difficult time structuring and figuring out how to make your business successful. Can you unpack that a little bit? Both of you guys can jump on that. I just think that's a really interesting thing, and I believe it's a real issue for small companies that don't have a massive staff, where you're so concerned on the day to day and the job at hand. And like you said, closing out the job that was supposed to close out 2 weeks ago, that you can't account for the next job or the business or who you're hiring or where it's going.
Since I made that comment, I'll defend it first, and then Joe can polish it up. My viewpoint on that is that we are so focused on getting those finished details to where they need to land for our satisfaction, which usually in past has been sort of beyond what the client is really after. Like I'm not going to toot our own horn there. We're trying really hard to get the precision level and quality level that we're after, and the performance standards that we aspire to in terms of efficiency and sustainability and airtightness goals and all that stuff. Our clients haven't been driving that bus. That's not a big deal here in the Midwest. People aren't beating down our door to be like, I want you to get me that 0.6. They don't care. That's not what they're calling us about. They want it to look amazing. They want it to be really comfortable. And so that has always been our focus. We always say it's a results-based business. We have to get to this outcome. And getting to that outcome in the short term usually means hands-on tools, people in space, or at least being very organized to get the right people there to do the things if it's not going to be us. But because of that, it's been very difficult to create the space and the time to dive into the efficiencies that would really govern success long term. It's been very difficult to forecast growth and plan for even something like a dedicated office, or things that most of our friends that are in this business have already done like years ago. Oh yeah, we've got a part-time gal that does books on Tuesdays, and it's one of those things that if you listen to any of this is how you improve your business, everyone says the first thing you do is hire a bookkeeper, and the second thing that you do is take the time to build your systems up so that you can rely on your systems and move efficiently through your projects. And we have never stepped back to do that. We have an accountant. Joe mostly does the books. We've got very minimal staff so that we can remain so lean, but it sort of perpetuates itself to where we never step back and go huge, big picture. Let's make these big swing improvements. We still put out a great product. And most of the time I'm happier on the tools than anywhere else. So I'm complaining about the very thing that I'm probably most at fault in perpetuating. That's just my view on it.
I want to hear from Joe, but before that, what do you think would have to happen for you to be able to step back to make these, what you're calling, bigger picture changes? Like, would you have to slow down? Like, would work have to dry up? Would financially you have to struggle so bad? Would you have to absorb some sort of cost in life where you're like, I just need to make more money? Like, what would have to happen to make that happen?
For me, I'd have to first be really unhappy. Like, I really like my life. I feel like everything's going really well for me. Like, my family's awesome, and my projects are still coming out really good. I'd have to be so unhappy that I would want change so badly, because I know it's going to be painful. So that would be the first thing. I would have to be really unhappy. And then the second thing is I would have to start to see the joy that I see from having hands on the work and, being on the tools and having my bags on, that same level of joy from the business side. Cause I know you guys are this way. And our friend Jake Bruton has always talked about there is a lot more joy now in his life to innovate a process in his business. And I don't feel that way at all. I don't get excited at all about oh man, this is a great new version of Buildertrend. Oh, couldn't care less. But if you show me that shiny new Milwaukee tool that's going to let me drive electrical staples in 8-inch joist space where I can't really quite hammer, now I'm in. I'm still a dork like that. So I think those are the two things that would have to change for me.
I think sorry. To interject, I'm very much like you, Travis, in the sense that the tools that would really excite me, and I would be pumped to use it. But I also side with Jake there, where no, it's not necessarily the new version of Buildertrend, but it's the product and the opportunities that those things open up. And I think this is what we talked about in Switzerland. It's really, for me, I was a carpenter forever, and then I have literally not touched tools in years at this point, and I'm so focused on business and building and growing and hiring and building this team to ultimately, you know, get to this current goal of mine. But the excitement doesn't come from creating the system or seeing the system in place. The excitement comes from when it is complete and realizing that you were able to delegate those things to people that are smarter than I, that and then allows you to put more of your focus onto the, you know, or into the things that like that stapler, where it's like, yeah, I took, you know, I took 4 weeks and I sat down with a bookkeeper and I got my shit straight. And now she's handling all the invoicing. So rather than, you know, invoicing clients at night after dinner, you know, I'm spending it with my wife. Or rather than invoicing in the middle of the day while I'm eating lunch, you know, I'm taking my project manager to lunch and finding out what his goals are in his life and finding a way to help him. It's, you know, it's weird. And, you know, for me, I think about growth, and I've been thinking about a lot recently, and like you know, we have been in this mode of we're just going to interview everyone, whether we're hiring or not. And we'll be very upfront with people where it's like, you know, people reach out. It's like, yep, no problem. We'll interview you. It's like, we're not hiring for that role, but let's interview. And then, you know, and then there's roles that we need. And, you know, we sit down and we talk, you know, my leadership team, and we're like, hey, we can't afford to hire someone like that. And we flip the conversation. It's like, well, what if we had that person on our staff? Would they afford themselves? Would that role afford itself? And, you know, it's like, well, it's still a risk, right? It's still like, well, if they are who they say they are, if they perform at the rate that they perform, it's like, what happens if they don't? It's like, that's a bad decision. And we, you know, that person would have to be let go. Like, we'd have to let go of them. But yeah, I'm going round and round here, but the growth side of it, you know, it's also not for everyone. I want to be clear about that, because I feel like sometimes I'm in a conversation, I talk about growth and scaling, and people are like, I just don't want to do that. I just want to I'm very content with what I'm doing. I'm like, hey, then this conversation was not meant for you. Like, if you're cool coasting, coast. I'm not. And I think a lot of people align with, they want more, and whether that's more time on the tools or more time doing, you know, a kids channel, that's more time building custom homes. It's the reality of what, you know, you and Joe have going on. It's you're doing a lot of things, as many of us are. You know, a lot of the people that are in our, I'm using air quotes, community, which it would be Instagram and like the who in the world in our community, where it's like, I would say the Instagram builders, right? The guys that are out there promoting what they're doing, you know, they're not just building homes. They're building homes. They're doing content for publications. They're you know, they're traveling to Switzerland to check out Sega's factory. They're holding a BS and beer. They're going to the IBS show. Like, all of those things are opportunities that they're taking advantage of. You know, and ultimately what you're talking about when it comes to the home building business is such a small part of what you're doing. But the opportunity for everything else that you want to do widens when you're able to reduce your responsibility within the core business. And that responsibility being, you know, running the business or scaling the business or growing the business or spending time in tasks within the business that one might argue, it's like, I like to stay lean and I'll just do everything. It's easier. I can make more money that way. It's like, well, you can make more money in the short term, like, but you're still maxed at what you can, a human being can put out every single day. Where it's like, if you doubled your team, you could potentially double your revenue, which means you're doubling your profit, which means you're doubling your take home. It's like, you know, in theory.
Yeah.
Or you maintain, but you free up your time, and now you're not only going to Switzerland to visit Sega, but you're going to Switzerland to hang out in Lucerne just for the hell of it.
Nick, did you redecorate?
Did I redecorate?
Yeah, behind you.
No. Oh, I hung my posters up that have been
Yeah,
sitting on the floor.
You redecorated.
I redecorated.
Looks legit. I was just sitting here watching. I was like, all of a sudden, I feel like he did some styling.
You know what? Doug got a storage unit for all our camera and media equipment. That's how professional we are.
We've grown.
And Doug was like, hey, if you want me to put the t-shirts that you have in your office in the storage unit, I don't mind doing that. So that turned into 4 people literally going through everything in the office and finding out what we could fit in that storage unit.
Makes sense.
Most of it we threw away, but at the very end, I was like, hey, let's hang these posters finally. So
Pro.
Yeah.
Joe, I guess I do want to know a little bit more about your role within the business. And then with relation to that, do you experience the same sentiments as Travis as being so hyper focused on your product and customer experience that you struggle putting long-term business plans or growth into effect with the business?
Yes. So my role, I do a lot of, I think Travis and we do a lot of scheduling on various projects. We'll each kind of run one, or, sometimes we have 7 projects that are open. So sometimes we'll work together on one, and then he'll be the lead on one project. I'll be the lead on the other. Just as far as scheduling, we still meet on those projects almost daily. I think a lot of this stems from starting the business, in a recession. So we stayed intentionally because, the first few years it was pretty rough. I mean, it's hard to get jobs when there's no construction really going on and you're a new company.
With 3 partners.
Yes. And then, as far as, with Catalyst, it's only been the last couple of years where really not bags on as much. And that would be, we're doing more new home management. So you trade in your tool bag for a broom sometimes, or just like general cleanup.
You guys have similar roles and responsibilities. It's not like you're the business end of things and he's more on site. You guys share a lot of the same duties and responsibilities.
Yeah, I would say if you were to split it up, Travis does a lot more of the customer correspondence, and I do the bookkeeping.
Okay.
But you're 100% right. We're wearing way too many hats. Both of us still like to be in the field. We like to have our eyes on our projects. And, when we meet with a client, one of the first things we always tell them is we're going to have less than 1 air change per hour on your house. That's guaranteed. And so then we're immediately thinking like how we're going to, because the house is not necessarily designed that way. So we're always thinking like, how do we achieve that? And sometimes we're fighting, tooth and nail to get there. And every client that has ever gone on that ride with us, that you just can't believe how comfortable their house is. As far as how that hinders us from growing, it's wearing all the hats, as Nick said, stuff with like just doing like the work with fine home building. It's a great experience and I wouldn't change that for anything, but it's just one more layer of responsibility in addition to building the house, in addition to running 2 different crews on 2 other job sites, another project that we're trying to start half an hour away that we're developing farmland to build a barn dominium and a timber built SIPS house. So there's only so much time in the day. And the reality is, and I think Travis would agree, and I think subconsciously we're both doing it. Our kids are getting older. It's one thing when your kid, is 4 and 5, they don't demand as much attention, I think, as far as when they're, like they have little league soccer and stuff like that. But now our kids are getting older. We're wanting to have more of an impact on their lives. I don't want to get done with dinner and then do paperwork for 2 hours. And so, like, the question for us is like, well, how do you develop that next phase of your business? I think we've taken the first step, but the reality is what we thought was a 2-year process could very well be 5 years. It just, and then do we just keep hiring and just till we find that next person? I'll be completely honest. We're not very good at firing anybody.
Are you hiring?
Maybe.
Joe, if I may chime in, like, I think the issue that people have with firing is obviously there's the emotional side of it where it's like you don't want to let someone down, but what it typically is, if you really dig into it, and what it's typically related to is unclear expectations or job description up front, where it's, when it's like, hey, I'm hiring you as a carpenter or a project manager. Great, that's my role. I do the role. It's like, well, you're not really doing a good job at it. It's like, based on what? Well, based on like my definition of a project manager. It's like, that's fine, but you didn't define what a project manager was, their role was. And because I struggled with that, where it's, I had some people ask me, that's like, well, what was my response? Like, where was I falling short? So defining, we're making, like, the hires that we're making now that or considering making, it's very intentional, and the measurables, KPIs, whatever you want to call them, like, they're very clearly outlined. Yeah. Where it's like the only way we can financially afford to do something like this is if we have this outlined in a way that we can measure. Because if they're not able, like, we need to be able to lean on, hey, we said that you needed to do X, Y, Z. You're not doing it, so this isn't working.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. You have to develop that content, so when they are hired, they have their clear expectation.
Right, and then it's like, when do I do that? After dinner. When I'm doing paperwork, it's like, after I write all the invoices, I'll write up a job description. And then you spend 2 hours Googling job description for lead carpenter, only to realize that none of them are the same. And one of them has a list of responsibilities that's 47 pages long that carpenter is going to be like, no.
Yeah.
I think part of it too with hiring, it's like that old Seinfeld episode where he ends up dating this girl that kind of looks like him and acts like him. And he's like, oh, I didn't realize all this time I was out there looking for me. That's really what we're looking for, is I want someone who will do it exactly the way that I would do it, so that it's happening the way that it would if I was there, but I'm somewhere else doing something else.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking for. I want someone with ownership mentality who is 100% invested in making it exactly the way it needs to be, that won't track anything on the floor, that is answering the phone at all hours if need be, that is just so committed. And that's just unrealistic, because no one else is the owner. Joe and I own the company. Anyone that we bring in is going to be a step down from that level of investment, because they are not
an owner.
Like, if they were if they were, they would do their own thing.
Yeah.
And you can bring people in and you can make it a cooperative. Workers cooperatives have been very successful. Like Ben Bogey's working on that with his company right now. Mm-hmm. They're employee owned. That's cool, man. That's a really long path. And Ben's been on it for a long time, and I don't think it's done. So it's really hard for me to get my head wrapped around the idea of this person who I am going to invest and try and train. At some point, I'm going to just kind of hand off part of, but I have to see that they're going to be as committed as I am. And it's a chicken and egg problem then, because maybe they would be more committed if I told them, I'd like to give this to you. But if it's not coming from them first, can I really trust that they're going to be there? Like, that's so scary to me. That's what the HR problems are.
So, I mean, how do you do that? Do you lower expectations, or do you hire somebody that you're going to pay a fat sum of money and then have to take on more work to offset those costs? So, like, to think the question for you two is, what's the first step in getting there? What could you offload? What's the first course of action to get to where you want to be? Because it sounds like you guys aren't necessarily looking to make more money or grow the business. You're looking to free up your responsibility and time a bit. I mean, obviously everyone wants to make more money, but it's not as though you want growth to be able to have more disposable income as much as have a little less on your plate. So what's the first thing? Do you feel that it's as far as it's lowering your expectations for your product, or is it being able to bring somebody in and how to offset that cost?
If we lowered expectations, it's no longer a product. Like that's not even on the table. That's so frustrating to me from a blood, sweat, and tears invested in this for so long. Like to even have that on the table as an idea, like is upsetting to me. I can't envision a situation where we're like, well, we're just not going to put out what people expect of us anymore.
No, but on the same point, you just said that you're never going to find somebody who does what you do. So like, unless you lower your expectation to a certain degree, you don't allow yourself, and trust me, I can completely relate to this. Like, if anyone can relate to this, I do. But if you don't ever think that that person exists, then like, what options do you have?
I want to believe that person does exist, and I am hoping that one day they're going to walk through the door.
Yeah.
Like, I want to believe that somebody's going to be like, I can see from your stuff that you put out there that you guys are really committed to this, and that's what I want to do. So show me the way.
That's the business plan.
Did I mention earlier that I'm not very good at business? Let me tell you about our nonprofit. This is our most successful business. We're really good at not making money.
All right, Joe, I'm ready.
The key is maybe it's a full-time employee with two separate tasks where they're our bookkeeper and they're essentially an office manager that can help us with just day-to-day tasks like email inquiries about getting a meeting with us. That could all go to them and they could schedule it. Basic bookkeeping for me to just review instead of produce it all myself. Because honestly, like I know Travis very well. I've known him for like 25 years plus. He's a hands-on guy. And like a good story would be, so our buddy Jake, he hired a project manager, but wasn't ready to take him on. So we went ahead and took him on for, I think, 8 months. And this guy's just lights out. He's a great tradesman. He's organized. And he's going to be a great project manager. But the reality is he still doesn't do the things the way Travis likes them or the way I really like them. And so not on all occasions. So Isaac, if you're listening to me, you're awesome. Don't worry about it.
The best ever.
Yeah, but to your point about Travis is, yes, he's very specific about the way he does stuff and the way he wants things done. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing for us if moving forward, we're in the field, half the day, just to oversee the work, and maybe we're the next level above the project manager that's actually on site. And we're not doing as much of like, hey, I had to call the plumber for the 4th time this week to make sure that he's actually going to show up the day he said he would. And just hand off some of the little, the parts, the noise of the business that just takes up the little things. And yeah, a lot of it, like the invoicing's a drag, especially when, I don't know if you guys deal with this at all, but, we'll deal with the banks.
Yeah.
And, it's like, well, you have to send an itemized cover sheet and then every receipt. And it's like, I'm turning in this invoice. It's like 55 pages long. And, that just, that's a ton of my time. And it's like, I'm way more valuable in the field running work or coaching up my guys or developing a new lead or a new project than I am doing basic accounting.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a relatively simple fix with regard to your business, because it's not necessarily that you need somebody that's directly related to your final product. Like, obviously that would be amazing to bring somebody in who could handle that, but you don't necessarily need to figure out how to integrate them into the business, how to train them, how to offset those costs. But to bring somebody in to handle your bookkeeping and the back end logistics of the business is like, you guys should do that immediately. Like, that's a no-brainer. Like, that's so easy to hand off. You don't want to be doing that shit anyway.
You're correct.
I mean, like, What do you feel is preventing you from doing that right now?
Trust. We don't trust easily. That's sharing information with someone and then getting them to implement our system. What everyone wants to do is tell you how their system is and have you adapt to them. And that would require a bigger input of time to reach that level of trust. And it's probably superior. Like, I don't think either one of us are an actuary. There's no reason to believe that we have great systems in place and we're just killing it over here and everyone should adapt what we're doing. But it's in order to be able to accurately assess if the bookkeeping is being followed through correctly, I would have to understand their systems. And that's going to require an input of time to learn them and then an additional input of time to check. And that has always been my greatest frustration is we spend a lot of time training up our crew on, hey, I'm a master electrician. This is the only way you should wire this. Listen to what I'm saying. Do it this way. Here, I'll show you. Now let's do one together. Now we've done this wall. Can you do that on the next wall? Great. I'm going to check it out tomorrow. And you come in tomorrow and you're like, what did you do here? What happened? Like, help me understand why you made this decision here when you had this to go from as your original guideline. And we talked about it. And I told you that I wanted it this way. Help me understand, did I not express it properly to you? Was there a different input that led you to this different outcome? And it just happens all the time. And it's so frustrating to want to do better and to want to systematize and streamline and bring people on, and to have such an inefficiency as a result of that, because everyone's going to go through growing pains. No one's going to get it the first time. But if you teach someone the same thing 6 or 7 times, you're not teaching them. You're just repeating, and you're repeating the failure. So you change your method. And if you still can't get over that hump, that's what I'm worried about with the bookkeeping side is this is all of our information. Bookkeeping's very linear. My mind works that way. That's perfect. That's great. But Joe's so much better on the numbers than I am. I just have terrible numeric recall. So for everything to get double checked, it's going to be redoing all of that until it's rote, until it's routine. And I think that's the fear. That's what's holding us back, I think.
I mean, the other thing is to consider that you are not a master accountant or a master bookkeeper.
100%.
So it's one of those things. I know for a long time I struggled with that as well, where it's like, this is what I want to do. I have my systems for it. And then I even went as far as to get QuickBooks, and I was taking online courses to learn QuickBooks. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, I'm up after dinner trying to learn QuickBooks when I could pay somebody a couple $100 a month to do this for me and not have to learn QuickBooks or have a QuickBooks account, or like, it made no sense to me. And I like to be able to give up the control for something that you don't want to be doing, that you're not an expert in the first place, does free you up where you are more valuable. And like, this to me seems like a perfect opportunity to absolve yourselves of responsibility that's keeping you from being where you want to be.
I want that time. I'm in. Joe, let's hire the bookkeeper.
I mean, the other nice thing is that like, you can have a remote bookkeeper. It's not even like you have to find somebody who's local to your area who's good.
I've heard mixed reviews on that. And I have a very limited field, but I have builder friends that use it, love it. I have other ones that thinks it's a disaster, and they went to finding just someone they could hire 20 hours a week and keep them under the umbrella of their office. So I guess it's more research on our part.
Yeah, but the person that had a terrible experience working with a remote bookkeeper and the person that had a good experience working with a remote bookkeeper weren't working with the same bookkeeper.
You're correct. Yes. And so then
it's not whether it's remote or local, it's the actual person that they're working
with.
It's
just finding the right person.
Yeah. Because mine is all remote. My CFO, my bookkeeper, my accountant, my controller, like they're a 6-person team, I think. And they're all remote. They live all around the country. I have one point contact that manages them, and they're running all, I think we have 7 different LLCs at this point, and she's got all that organized.
Holy cow.
Yeah. And it's not, I mean, it's certainly, I'm not saying like I hired her and it was like surprise, like we're all set. But it was, it probably took 12 months to get our systems in place, and to the point where, as we continue, I think we're on year 4 at this point, but it's like every year my responsibility or what my involvement is a little less, where it's like, yeah, I'm ultimately signing off on the cash going out, but I'm not the one looking to make sure that, hey, did we have the plumber's certificate of insurance? Did he sign the lien waiver? Is this actually against our PO, or is he overcharging us? All of that's being done through a process that was written, and the proper people are in place to make sure that happens. And I feel confident enough that it's there.
We'll get there. Don't give up on us, guys.
Oh, I'm not.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I would say that with the position that you guys are in, it would be more daunting to say, hey, we need field help, and we need to be able to afford a full-time PM that's able to execute at our level and adopt our systems. I think that's a much difficult position to be in than to find somebody to pass your accounting and your books off to. So I think that you guys have that going for you, especially if that's not what you want to be doing. It's also tough, I'm sure all three of us know, to have a business or a company where you're so heavily focused on quality and building to a standard. No matter what, you're going to limit and stunt your own growth.
Yeah. We're not designed for volume.
No. And like, to be able to accept that and understand what your capacity is and where you want to be and what brings you joy in life, then it's figuring out, hey, maybe I just need a little bit more free time. How do I get there? And trying things. But I think with the position that you guys are in, and you've established yourselves, and you started a business in a recession, I would say that you guys are in a fairly good position to be, especially with just looking to pass off your books at this point. What Nick had said, you guys have a lot of other things going on, or he hinted at that. So you have an educational nonprofit, you have the Building Science Symposium, BS and Beer, obviously the influencer deals, creating all this content. What else is on your list that you guys enjoy doing that's not necessarily Catalyst right now?
Joe's a hunter. He's got real hobbies. All I do is dork out.
There you go. It's not hunting season, is it?
No, but it's mainly just, I'm not a very good hunter, but I enjoy the act of hunting more than anything.
What do you hunt? Deer?
Yeah. Deer, turkey. I like to fish if I get the opportunity. It's fun. I can take my boys, even though they're not of legal age yet, but it's still like, hey, let's just go out and have an adventure.
That's a fall and winter sport?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Are you taking guided trips? Do you hunt on private property? What's the deal out there?
No. Well, usually I hunt public. So yeah, probably the reason I'm not super successful all the time is that I usually hunt public, and I try to find like the biggest property around, and then I'll just go hunt that. And so my odds of success are much lower just getting out of my truck than they would be if I spent $10,000 and went on a guided trip.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
that
I know
take out all the fun for me.
Yeah, I know around here a lot of people hunt public land, but obviously there's issues with hunting public land. But then a lot of people end up hooking up with farmers or people who own private land and trying to be able to hunt on their land, either for a small fee or just getting grandfathered into that.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely prefer just, if I want to walk in like 2 miles, then I can,
Yeah.
And I hunt some private land, but it's, for me, it's like primitive. So it's like, I don't want to have to call and ask permission. I just want to get up and go. And it's really, for me, it's the adventure is 50% of it.
Yeah. Do you guys have mule deer out there or whitetail?
Way west. And It's on my bucket list.
Yeah.
I already
You're
traveled.
primarily hunting whitetail deer?
Yeah, whitetail.
Cool.
But I'd say a good second, when we started the BS and beer, that kind of, in a way, like revitalized Catalyst a little bit, gave me something to look forward to. And
Are you guys do you guys found it? Like,
yes.
were you guys one? You guys are one that started it, right?
No, the symposiums, yes.
Got
but
it.
BS beer's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike Maines and Dan Colbert and Steve Constantino founded the original BS and Beer. And then Joe and I were at a contractor licensing class and talking about, oh man, Mike Maines is posting this stuff about they're getting together doing a BS and Beer in Maine. It's stupid, but I really want to go. Like, how long does it take to get to Maine? And so there was a third guy that we were talking to about this. He's like, yeah, we should just do one here. And we're like, yeah, great idea. We went back to class. And then I got a text from that guy 2 days later. It's Joe Nichols, local aero barrier rep. He's like, hey, I set it up for next Tuesday. Like, what? So yeah, we started the local Kansas City BS and Beer, modeled after Mike and Dan and everyone's in the Northeast, and had been doing monthly meetings. And then we went to the summit where we, I don't think we actually met at that. I saw you guys there, but that was a long time ago in 2019.
The Fine Home Building.
Fine Home Building Summit.
Yeah.
And after we came back from that, we were like, that's stupid. That shouldn't just be in the Northeast. Like that event should be happening everywhere. So that's when we founded the nonprofit and created the symposium series, which is now in its fourth year. Sorry, I can count. I've got fingers and toes. And yeah, we're really excited. We have breaking news. We're breaking news on the Modern Craftsman podcast.
Ooh,
this is big.
Drum roll.
Yeah. Minneapolis is the first of the 23 series. I know we did one in DC, but that was actually supposed to be part of the 22 series, and it was that speaker schedule. The 23 series begins in Minneapolis, May 9th and 10th, and it is sold out. So
damn.
Congrats.
Too late.
That's amazing. How many of you guys are doing a year?
Too late, suckers.
Four.
Four.
So quarterly, essentially.
4 regions a year. We actually might get a fifth this year, but that's super secret. Hush, hush. Don't tell anyone, guys. There might be a fifth one this year on the 23 series, which would put us actually 6 in the calendar year of 23 because DC lagged into 22. But the other breaking news that we have, how we were talking about how great we are at the business side and how we're really on top of it with the bookkeeping.
I do recall that.
Well, Joe just wrapped up the books from the nonprofit last year, and we have our Keep Craft Alive donation, which we were going to announce on Instagram today, and we didn't have time to post Instagram, but we made it to the podcast. So the symposium series, it's all basically sponsor funds that make that happen. It's all that. So the Hubers, the Rockwells, the Sashkos, all of Andersen, who's sponsoring the Minneapolis series, they essentially pay for these events for attendees to come and enjoy 2 days of content. That's all covered. But we were having a hard time 2 years ago. I think we donated like $4,000 worth of food that we just didn't use because people were booking, reserving their spot and then not showing up.
Yeah.
So we have a sellout crowd of 225 that 150 people showed up for. So we have to offload all this food. It was really inefficient. So we decided, okay, we're going to have a ticket, because initially it was just register and you're in free. So the ticket was $100, and we said, hey, we're just going to donate all that money to Keep Craft Alive, whatever our proceeds are from each event. So last year we raised through our.
But you have the big check.
Check.
Like the Publishers Clearinghouse check.
For real.
What's the number on there?
It says
$42,774 that we raised for Keep Craft Alive. So that's just the proceeds from those events, and we hope to do more this year. But it's
good for you really guys.
What's that?
I said good for you guys. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, good for the trades. Thank you for that. But honestly, this is not a celebration of us. This is a celebration of everyone who put their money into taking time off to get better at their work. Like all the attendees of the symposium series, that cost them way more than the $120 or whatever they ended up registering for.
All right, I take it back. Screw you guys.
Yeah, I'm not great at taking compliments.
Well, I was going to ask Joe. He said, that this is revitalized or reinvigorated him, so to speak, and what it was about this that is making you feel that way. But obviously, service work is something that can make you feel a lot of gratitude, and obviously that probably has something to do with it.
Definitely. A little bit, for the 2 days, we'll go to the symposium. You get a mental break. I watched the same symposium 4 times, and every event I learned a little bit more. I've watched Steve Basic, and, it's like, oh yeah, I remember this. And it's like, oh, I don't remember him talking about this. And so I feel like it's, besides for like contractor licensing, we don't really have a lot of opportunities to continue our education. So this has been really great to just be a part of it. Back to the business side of BS and Beer is, Travis and I, we never took a check for doing it. We've gotten our expenses covered is basically where it ends. And so this is really, truly something we donate our time into to develop all this content and produce this, what we consider something really awesome. And then, to have money left over at the end of the 4 events from last year to donate back. We're averaging over 10,000 per event. And so that's, it's pretty cool.
Well, listen, I would give you credit, but obviously Travis doesn't want it. So you guys suck. We hate what you're doing.
Well, so, all right. First one to Minneapolis, sold out, too late. Where are the other 3?
So the Northeast Symposium takes place, I think it's June 20th and 21st in Connecticut. So I assume that we can expect you guys to make the journey down. Help a brother out, man. Stratford, Connecticut? Come on now.
Boston would be closer.
Well, I tried for Boston. I think we actually talked about that, Nick.
We did.
You suggest it was Trillium. We had a hard time making that work. The parking was an issue. The location was awesome.
Oh, you were looking at Boston. They have one right outside the city with a giant parking lot.
We looked at that too.
Travis, too late.
Boston is tough. Navigating around your city, as you know.
Listen, don't make it in Boston. Screw Boston.
All right, Connecticut's
great.
Connecticut.
Will you guys come to Stratford, Connecticut in June? We'll send you an invitation.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be great.
And then in September we have Denver area.
Oh, amazing.
It's probably going to be at Oasis Brewery, and I think the site dates are on. The dates are on the website,
Cool.
bsandbeerkc.org. And then the last one of the year that's guaranteed is in Charlotte, North Carolina. So,
nice.
All
awesome.
Cool areas.
And it's different speakers at each one, which is something we changed from last year. Like Joe said, we had the same people at every one. And I think that's great. That's really what the idea was originally was we'll produce this content once, but we can't let it die in this one place. It has to be spread out and shared as much as we can. But we found out that, guys like you that teach and share don't necessarily have easy schedules, and some things are regional. So like we're in Minneapolis, we've got John Straub coming down from Canada to talk about rain screens. We've got Randy Williams there for cold climate issues. We've got Ross Trethewey in Connecticut because you guys have different heat pump issues than we have out here. Like ground source doesn't make any sense here at all, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. And I was talking to Ross about it. And I was like, I don't want to talk about ground source heat pumps at all. It's a dead issue. He's like, not up here. It's a total comeback, man. It makes perfect sense on these small sites where we can't physically fit equipment on the side of our house because it's too close to the next house. In these compact areas of Boston, ground source is the win because there's no exterior equipment. So like, you got to be kidding me. I hadn't thought about that at all. So we're trying to be more regional with our content. And so we'll see different speakers in different places. And we're really excited to offer that more appropriate per location experience.
Do you guys have a cap on how many people can come to these, or what are you looking at, like 100, 200 people per event?
We're trying to keep it around 125, 70 to 150 is the range, depending on the venue. But it's very, very important. Like you guys, we were talking about Joe's hobby hunting. This is my hobby, like figuring all this stuff out. This is the thing that I'm into. So I sit and think about like, how many people can we actually share this with and still have the camaraderie, the experience around the presentations is honestly just as important, in some places more so. Like the vibe in Austin was crazy good last year, but I was blown away by DC because the venue was smaller and it made it better for like sitting there talking to Zach Detmore for 20 minutes. I wouldn't have had that in that big ocean of space. Everyone would have been like pulling them and doing other things. And it just, keeping it intentionally small is so important to the event being what it is. And it actually works better for the sponsors too, because I mean, obviously the sponsors want to have firsthand conversations with decision makers at these firms. And when you're intentionally small, you know, the company that has 12 employees, they're not going to bring all 12. They're going to bring their top 3 or 4. Yeah. So we're hoping that trickle down information sharing is happening back at these companies when these people return to their places. But it's really special to be a part of that building science community and to be able to have conversations where you can ask Peter Yost something about your job. Like that's kind of why people go to these. So it's very intentionally small. And that's why we still treat it like a BS and beer event. We put it in a brewery, we put it in a small place where everyone's just casual, and you belly up to the bar and ask Steve about this detail or Jake about that or Ben about whatever. We got Ben Bogey in Connecticut, so you'll want to ask him about vapor there.
So it's generally 2 days worth of speaking?
Yep, it's a 2-day conference. We tried last year, we tried giving each speaker 2-hour and 15-minute sessions, and people kind of wanted a few more breaks. So we're doing 45-minute sessions. So each speaker will have about 3 sessions. We have Koto Ueno, the BS Building Science Corporation, like the diagnostic testing original guy. He's a human computer is how Steve Basic describes him. And he's going to unpack kind of how we know what we know. Like we have all these things that we've learned and we've changed the building code and we've changed our assemblies and all our best practices have modified, but that's all based on research that someone else did. And it may not work on your site because you're in climate zone 8 and you're in climate zone 6. And Code is the guy who just has all that. So him unpacking all that is going to be awesome. So he's 3 sessions on the second day. Straub's 3 sessions on the second day. And I think Jake closes it out on the second day with like selling all these high performance things because that's a big part of it too. Like I said, I'm weak on business. That's a huge part of this. If you can't get your client to buy it, it doesn't matter how much cool stuff you know about. You got to be able to sell them the comfort and the efficiency and the environmental responsibility. Like all those angles matter. So yeah, we got Steve doing architectural details on day 1. And then who am I missing? I'm forgetting something. Randy Williams in Minneapolis. But in Connecticut, we won't have Randy and we won't have Straub. We've got Ben Bogey and we've got Ross Thui. And it just keeps changing up. So come to all of them. Come on, guys.
So are you, and I would assume this is
quite the salesman.
Probably on the website, but are you recommending hotels if people are traveling, where to stay so that everyone's together?
We are trying to provide that information. We had a hotel block last year for DC. Well, I guess that was this year. And I think that is kind of coming together, but we don't have that yet for Denver. And I'm not sure that we have it set for Connecticut yet, but we did have it in Minneapolis. And we try to make it really affordable. In fact, I should mention some of the sponsors have stepped up and said, look, we know this is a really big deal for a tradesperson to take 2 days off to try and get better at their job, like travel, lodging, lost income. So some of our sponsors have actually offered scholarships. So if you're a tradesperson looking to get better and you're like, man, I would love to go something like that, I just can't swing it. There's a workaround, and that link is in that symposiums drop down as well at
That's awesome.
bsandbeerkc.org.
Sorry, repeat, what's the website? A little slower.
Sorry, it's bsandbeerkc.org, bsandbeerkc.org. And there's a symposiums drop down that has all this stuff.
Cool. Well, everyone definitely check that out. We obviously appreciate what you guys are doing, appreciate your time. I know this is the second time that we're doing this podcast. It took a completely different direction. We're glad to have Joe on with you as well, but we definitely appreciate your time and everything you guys are doing for the industry.
Thank you.
Likewise, guys, we really appreciate your leadership in the industry as well. The original fine home building ambassadors that you guys are, like, come on, man, we're all aspiring.
Throwback.
I will say though, I'm super disappointed because when we booked this, all I wanted to do was talk about tapes with Tyler, and they didn't even come up. My brother,
really, dude, that's your fault. That's
tape?
I didn't know you wanted to discuss tapes. We could have.
What kind of tape?
Any kind
Come on,
of tape.
Nick, you got to listen to the midweek shorts with Tyler. They're amazing. His one on tape was killer.
I don't listen
All
to.
filler, no filler.
Nick's not into tape, apparently. His
No,
law,
I mean, I use tape. I just wasn't sure which tape we were talking about.
I'm
all
sending you a
tape,
G-tape
man.
roll. I'm going to
All
send you some
tapes.
G-tape today.
Who bought G tape again? Someone bought no Ramboard, right?
Did they
Did
really?
they? I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Ramboard now.
You remember the old G-tape salesman who was like the original guy?
I think he's still
He lives
around.
in Kansas now.
Does he?
He's like a coffee.
Yeah, he
brewer.
didn't he
I'm
own
pretty-
like, he bought like a little like shop or something that he's running
Yes.
now. Yeah.
One of the floor protection companies acquired the G tape, and I think
Brilliant.
I thought it was Ramboard.
You can always find incorrect information here first. Modern Craftsman podcast.
Nick, you should do stock tips too, like business
Yeah.
acquisitions. and
No,
stock
because
tips.
then I'll get
It's
sued.
all
I'll definitely get
dubious.
sued for that.
Well, guys, we appreciate your time. Good luck on wrapping up that project as well. I know making time when a project is closing out a little bit late is very tough to do, and other guests may have canceled. So we appreciate it.
Worth it, guys. Thanks so much.
Cool, guys. Well, thank you.
Those guys are cool. Did not expect the reason as to why that
No.
didn't move forward, but I mean, that's such good content, and I can understand the editing burden it might be, but hopefully the team over there finds value in it, because I think that teaching 10-year-olds, we'll just kind of average it out there, about building is incredibly important. That's a more critical age than I think we give credit to.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously a lot of work put forth, always things to be learning to refine your process. And especially with builders, contractors, remodelers, we're all learning how to do this and what makes the most amount of sense for the entire industry. So I think that that has to be taken into account there.
100%. Well, guys, until next week, we haven't promoted it much, but head over to moderncraftsman.co. It's our website. It's got all the episodes on it. It's got Tyler's blog on it. And if you're not already paying attention to the midweeks with Tyler, make sure you do that. And if you want to schedule some time one-on-one with us, we got links in our bios. We offer some one-hour consulting calls. I think we're both doing at least one a week at this point, talking to some cool people. But there's links there as well. Until next time, see you then.
Adios.